Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, live on CBS Sports Network. Big Ten action on Friday night will feature a pair of ranked teams as Illinois goes to face Nebraska. Both teams off to a 3-0 start. Both teams starting their Big Ten conference play with this primetime showdown. And we will have time to talk about Dylan Rayola, the superstar freshman quarterback. But I'd like to throw a little curveball, Tom, if that's okay with you, because I would like to ask you about Luke Altmaier, because here's something that just stands out. We had Luke Altmaier throw 10 interceptions last year. It was second in the Big Ten in terms of the kind of category you don't want to be second in, interceptions. So far this year, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. You mentioned earlier in the show that it's been a little bit of a surprise, Illinois not necessarily being able to get up there and run the ball at will like you might have thought coming into the year. Where is your confidence in Luke Altmaier, and where is your confidence in him being able to lead an offense that can go into hostile territory in Lincoln and be able to put Illinois in a position to win the game?
That's a good question. From what I have seen so far this season, I think the biggest difference in Luke Altmaier is, he's more comfortable in the offense going into his second season as a starter, and more familiarity is never going to hurt any quarterback in any situation. But I also think he's been far more decisive with the football. I think last year at times you saw him kind of standing in the pocket a little too long, waiting for guys to get open and waiting for things to be perfect, and then getting sacked because of it. But this year, he's making the decision. He's making the first read. If it's not there, he's moving to the second guy. He's getting the ball out, or he is leaving the pocket himself. But I also think another large factor is last year, Illinois' offensive line was not very good in pass protection. And I think this year, it's kind of the opposite. I feel like they got 2 tackles in J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley, both out of the transfer portal. J.C. Davis came from New Mexico. Priestley came from Grambling. And they've been very good for keeping a pocket and pass protecting. It's when the run game where I feel like the interior of that line has kind of struggled a bit. So he's been able to drop back. He's gotten time. Receivers Pat Bryant, Sakari Franklin, another transfer who came in from Ole Miss, was familiar with current Illinois offensive coordinator Barry Lunny from their time together at UTSA. They've been very important for him. Illinois is taking a lot of shots down the field. And the one thing about Altmaier is I do feel like when it comes to the vertical passing game, he has very good touch and accuracy, and that has been on display a lot for the Illini so far this season. So I do think things are going very well for him. But at the same time, I don't know if he's faced a defense that's as good as the Nebraska defense he will be seeing this week. It'll be on the road in a tough environment. I do expect that, if that interior offensive line continues to struggle, Nebraska's got a couple of good guys on the inside of their defensive line, starting with Nash Hutmacher, the polar bear, who could be very disruptive, who could cause some problems for them. So to me, that's going to be an interesting aspect to watch from the Illini side of things on offense.
I used to sit in the studio in New York when we were doing a lot of UTSA games, and I loved Sakari Franklin and what he brought to the table. And I thought he was going to work at Ole Miss. For whatever reason, it didn't. But I think it's got to be a great sign for the Illini that you've got that version that you saw that really dominated when he was UTSA. And it's kind of amazing. He's helped the whole receiving core. They're kind of lifted up level of play. You can't focus on just one guy and roll coverage. So it's opened up things for Pat Bryant somewhat as well. The offensive line, I'll be curious because I do think this is a game where you want to get Feagin going more. Caden Feagin, the 6'3", 250-pound Mack truck. Like, this is one where it's hard. Like, it's one thing to run the ball and to throw it and have that success through the air, and it puts Altmaier in really good situations and be able to protect the football. But I do think this is one where you'd want to establish the run game. And it's on the road. There's no better way to silence a crowd than to start sustaining drives, to kind of, work your way and to establish some sort of dominance on the ground. So that's a matchup for me that I'll be watching, because I don't think they're going to be able to go in there and just start throwing it all over the yard. They got to bring more balance to the table. And I'm sure that'll be part of Brett Bielema's game plan for this Illinois offense when they go into Lincoln.
Yeah, Nebraska's defense, even when they were having their struggles last season, has been so structurally sound. They don't have a lot of breakdowns. They do a great job of keeping the action in front of them, of swarming to the ball. I mean, it was a lot of the game plan against Shadur Sanders in Colorado, where it's like, okay, I'll tell you what you're not going to do is you're not beating us over the top. We're going to make sure that we step up and we rally to the ball, and we make you work for every little bit. Definitely important for them to have some balance. Okay, now let's go to superstar time. Let's go to our superstar quarterback, Danny. Have you seen enough to believe that Dylan Rayola is, in fact, that dude?
Oh, baby Patrick Mahomes, who definitely didn't do all this on purpose. Definitely doesn't wear 15, doesn't wear his hairstyle that way. Clearly, he doesn't do that on purpose. He's lived up to the hype. I mean, he's exceeded, I think, most people's expectations of what he could be, and those were incredibly lofty expectations. I think the thing that's impressed me most is sort of the poise, the composure, the confidence with which he's playing with. But I will say this, he has not faced an adverse situation yet. And whenever I look at quarterbacks, I like to evaluate them after they've thrown a pick six, after they've had a game where they threw 2 picks that potentially lost them a game or flat out did lose them a game. He hasn't had that. They've played from out in front every game, including a very dominant first half against Colorado, where they're not real high stress situations. We talked earlier about Nebraska. The one thing that they haven't answered yet is those one possession games. What happens if it's the second half and they're coming out and they're trailing by 3 points, or it's the fourth quarter and it's a tie game? How does he respond in that situation? Look, clearly he's looked the part so far. I would be shocked if he doesn't look comfortable, but sometimes you try to do a little bit too much, and this is the type of game where every possession is amplified, so some of those rookie mistakes could end up costing you a game.
I'm not going to judge Dylan Rayola too harshly for the Patrick Mahomes obsession, because when I was his age, you might have confused me with a member of the band Korn. So when you're 18, you've got idols and you do what you want to do. What does bother me about Rayola's obsession with Patrick Mahomes is he doesn't have to make every single throw he makes look like Patrick Mahomes doing something cool. Like, I wish he would step into more throws and fire some rockets. He looks a little too nonchalant at times, and it does bother me. And as you mentioned, Danny, going up against a better defense, perhaps that could kind of come to haunt him in this game. But the most interesting thing to me about Rayola is, all of that aside, for a kid with as little experience as he has done such an excellent job of getting the ball out quickly and on time. You know, a couple weeks ago, Shador said, how many times was Rayola touched, throwing his offensive line under the bus? He wasn't touched because he got rid of the ball, which is what a good quarterback is supposed to do. And the other side of that, though, Nebraska hasn't asked him to do a whole lot. If you look at Rayola's pass chart so far this season, 34 of his 80 pass attempts have been at the line of scrimmage or behind it. He's also using the middle of the field nearly exclusively. If you add in throws between the hash marks, 47 of his 80 passes have either been behind the line of scrimmage or between the hashes. Are they going to open up the entire field for him, or is that the only place where they're comfortable with? Because I can guarantee you Illinois understands that, and Illinois is going to do what it has to do to try to confuse him pre-snap and try to take away what he's, been comfortable with. And as we talked about early in the show, Illinois has done a very good job of forcing turnovers. Can they bait Dylan Rayola into turning the ball over? And if they do, and he gets kind of rattled, how will he respond to that? Because we have not seen that situation yet, because he's been so good to start his career that we don't know what it's going to look like when he has to deal with adversity.
A defense with 6 interceptions against a freshman quarterback in a primetime slate. Let's go. All right, let's get some early leans, some early thoughts. Our best bets, of course, always available on Thursday's Lock Show. You can watch it live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, youtube.com/cover3. This thing was, 8.5 the beginning of the week. We're seeing it race all the way out to 9.5, maybe even 10 in some spots, over under in the mid to lower 40s. Tom, how do you think this one plays out?
If it gets to 10, I'd hammer Illinois, because I do think Nebraska is going to win this game. It's just, I have a difficult time looking at a team with a true freshman quarterback and thinking that they are going to win by double digits against a team with a defense this good. I think it's going to be close. I do think Nebraska is better overall, and I do think defensively they will be able to limit a lot of what Illinois is going to try to do. It's just, I don't have full hope in Nebraska's ability to pull away, because we saw in the second half against Colorado's defense is not good. And it wasn't like Nebraska just completely took their, foot off the gas pedal. They were still trying to move the ball, and they were pretty ineffective doing it. So it'll be interesting to see if they can sustain that for 60 minutes enough to pull away. I think they win, but I think it's close.
The Scott brothers, even though they're not brothers in the secondary for the Fighting Illini, I think it all comes to an end. I like Nebraska. I'm bullish on Nebraska. The one thing, too, the vibes, this place is going to be absolutely bonkers. We already saw it against Colorado. Now I think you multiply that even a little bit more. I think it's going to be a tough challenge in that atmosphere for Illinois.
I got to see it. I'm with Tom. I think this one's going to be a little bit closer. If this spread gets too big, then I see this one. Ball's in number 15's hands, and he's got to go make a play. And for someone who fancies himself after Patrick Mahomes, that's what you should want. Come on, and maybe we can profit. All right, coming up on the other side, we've had some conversations about teams that have gotten off to quick starts, but what about even sort of big picture? What are some of our biggest surprises of the early season? Plus, a little bit later, our player to watch for Week 4 in the Big Ten. All that and more next.